Guys, the last time I reviewed Sanguine Alchemy was over 4 years ago, literally back in Black Armory. Now for my new players, you may not immediately recognize this exotic. However, it's been deemed extremely mediocre ever since it launched in Warmind. Now back then whenever it launched, which was 2018, it came with the exotic perk Heightened Senses, stating that standing in a rift grants an enhanced radar and marks high priority targets for you and your allies. Essentially, while you were standing in your rift, you'd be granted wall hacks. Now it had some uses inside of PvP, although required you to stay stationary. And inside of PvE, it was practically useless, which I would say across the board made this one of the most least desirable exotics in all of Destiny. But in March of 2020, during the launch of Season of the Worthy, Bungie tried to rebalance Sanguine by completely reworking its exotic perk in patch 2.8.0. It then came with the perk Blood Magic, stating that weapon kills while standing in any rift will pause the rift's countdown, extending its duration, and further kills maintain and extend the length of this pause. Essentially, while you stood in a rift and killed an enemy, you would get a buff called Blood Magic for 5 seconds. As long as the Blood Magic buff was active, your rift's timer would stay frozen, and when Blood Magic timed out, your rift timer would begin counting down again. Now while this rework finally gave players a reason to bring Sanguine into PvE content, the general community consensus around its new perk was that it was still very much underwhelming. On top of that, its PvP strength was lowered due to this rework, making Sanguine, again, one of the most mid-exotics in the game. I don't know, I got like one guy in the back like, no Cross, I use Sanguine every day. All right, man, I'm sure you do. Now in Season the Deep, and after over 3 years of remaining mediocre, Bungie decided to finally buff Sanguine Alchemy. In addition to Blood Magic's original functionality, you also now be granted a non-stacking damage bonus to weapons with a matching damage type to your subclass. As was stated in the Season 21 Exotic Armor Tuning preview, this damage bonus is the equivalent of 2 Surge Leg mods, that being 17% in PvE and 4.5% inside of PvP. Now the biggest point of confusion when this change was revealed was the inclusion of the phrase non-stacking. Now while it was stated earlier in the tuning preview that some of the changes were supposed to alleviate the feeling of having to run surge mods on your leg armor, the inclusion of the phrase non-stacking in the patch notes still felt kinda ambiguous, just saying. And it raised some questions about whether it could stack with surges or an empowering rift, and perhaps Well of Radiance. Now as it turns out, it can't stack with surges, but it does stack with empowering rift, as well as Well of Radiance. Now to test these numbers, we brought Sleeper Simulant to Carl. First we decided to test Sanguine's damage bonus alongside a healing rift, an empowering rift, as well as Well of Radiance, but without any surge mods. Without Sanguine or any other buffs present, we were hitting 118,445 damage at base and in a healing rift. This then cranked up to 142,146 damage in an empowering rift and 148,069 damage in a Well of Radiance, which is the standard 20% buff and 25% buffs for empowering rifts and wells respectively. Now adding Sanguine, we still hit 118,445 damage outside of a rift. When we step into a healing rift though, we begin to hit for 138,593 damage. This is approximately 17% higher than at base, matching the patch notes description of the buff and matching the same 17% buff that you would get from 2 surge mods. Now Sanguine's damage bonus stacks multiplicatively with empowering rift and Well of Radiance, and with Sanguine Alchemy equipped, Sleeper hits for 166,311 damage against Carl when standing in an empowering rift, and then 173,241 damage when standing in a Well of Radiance. In the end, we gain about a 17% damage boost while standing in a healing rift, and about a 40% damage boost while standing in an empowering rift, and a 46% damage increase when standing in a Well of Radiance, all while just simply having Sanguine Alchemy equipped. Now, how does Sanguine interact with elemental surge mods? Surge mods and Sanguine do not stack in any scenario. When running both 1 or 2 surge mods, while also having Sanguine equipped in a rift, we were hitting for identical damage numbers to when we didn't have any surge mods equipped. In theory, this is what Bungie meant by non-stacking, since both surge mods and Sanguine's damage boost fall under the same general category of damage buff. They do not stack with each other. This would mean that Sanguine's 17% damage boost would be overridden by the 22% damage boost from having 3 surge mods equipped. And as it turns out, this is the case. With 3 surge mods equipped, Sanguine equipped, a stack of armor charge, and while standing in a healing well, Sleeper hits for 144,515 damage, matching the expected 22% buff from 3 Surge mods, and overriding the usual 17% buff from Sanguine. Now, upon hearing this, one might think, well, what's the point of using Sanguine Alchemy over 3 Surge mods if you're just going to be losing out on some damage? Alright, sure, that's a strong argument. You are losing approximately 5% more damage, but you're not having to consume 3 whole mod slots. Where the newly buffed Sanguine Alchemy really thrives is in that ease of use. It requires very little setup, literally just put it on. You don't have to rely on generating orbs and juggling armor charge, and as long as you're able to get a rift or a well down, you'll be benefiting from that damage buff. And this can be useful in a number of places. For one, any in-game PvE activity. In most high-level nightfalls, as well as lost sectors, it can sometimes be difficult to get close enough to collect the orbs you need to proc your surges. With Sanguine though, you can pop your rifts and you immediately get that damage boost from safety. And this can be used for a multitude of reasons. You can use it for ad clearing by popping your rift from safety and upkeeping it with blood magic. You can use it to help kill champions by utilizing that free damage buff from placing a rift anytime you come across one. As long as there are enemies to defeat, you can even use it for pure survivability by staying in your healing rift while clearing the room. That being said, unfortunately, your well can be extended by blood magic. Dude, that would just be nuts though, right? Another one of Sanguine's benefits is that it frees up your leg armor to run other mods. Guys, there are so many times that I find myself in a pinch because I am rocking 3 Surge mods. And suddenly I realize I have no ammo because I'm not rocking a Scav mod. Or perhaps I want to dip into some of those mods that either heal me or lower my ability cooldowns. There's a number of other options here, guys. And I feel since the beginning of Lightfall, everyone has just defaulted to triple Surge mods. And I feel like Sanguine frees that up. And this season we even have Elemental Charge. We're collecting things like Fire Sprites, Ionic Traces, Stasis Shards, Void Breaches, or even destroying a Tangle has an escalating chance of giving you a stack of armor charge. You can even run things like stacks on stacks for double charge. Again, Sanguine gives you that versatility and pretty much enhances every weapon you could be using. As long as you are matching the weapon damage type to your subclass, you will be enhancing it. Which is why I want us to cover some of the standout choices for PvE before we start talking about PvP. For solo Warlocks, you guys have a ton of choices. If you're running an ad dense activity, there are plenty of weapons you can rock here. Vex Mythic class and any solar weapon with Incandescent are usually fantastic for ad clearing. And as confirmed in the most recent TWAB, we know that hand cannons are soon to receive a sizable buff in PvE, meaning weapons like Sunshot, Zalo's Bane, especially if you got that craftable roll Zalos, those are going to be extremely solid choices in the future. DPS wise, you can run a lot of weapons. Sleeper Simulant is a great choice, especially for bosses with higher crit multipliers. Cataclysmic with Bait and Switch, Briar's Contempt literally uses to solo the dungeon. You can even use Sanguine to squeeze out a little more damage from your Galahorn. But arguably one of the best DPS weapon choices in the current meta would be to hot swap a Reconstruction Bait and Switch Apex Predator with either Izanagi's Burden or a Witherhoard, because Sanguine is essentially getting rid of the need to rock Solar Surges to boost your rocket's damage. You can replace them with 2 or even 3 kinetic surges to boost up your Izanagi's or your Witherhoard. Now this creates a situation that when you're in a DPS phase that allows for rocket hot swapping, Sanguine no longer feels like it's potentially limiting your damage output. You're still benefiting from a 17% damage boost for your rockets while still simultaneously getting that 22% damage buff for either that Izanagi's or Witherhoard. This is a sizable boost here, guys. Really. Having that ability to boost both your solar and kinetic damage for hot swapping, this is meta. Now for Void Warlocks, guys, I think the most obvious choice here is Leviathan's Breath. The damage from Leviathan's is so good we had to do a deep dive on it. We literally use it in almost every Nightfall, especially Void Surge Nightfalls. Leviathan's Breath is easily one of the top meta contenders for both DPS and general play, and it's an essential when considering putting together a void build for nuking champions, mini bosses, and even bosses, and pairs very nicely here with Sanguine. Now if you want to run a void primary too, one that can benefit you is Age-O Bond. We did a live review of this auto rifle, but this is a fantastic 360, and I know 360s aren't exactly the meta, but what's so unique about this auto rifle is that it can roll with things like repulsor brace and destabilizing rounds. You can utilize the volatile effects that spreads from destabilizing rounds allows to then proc Repulsor's Brace Overshield. Pretty much always tacking on a little bit of Overshield for extra health and damage resistance. And because Age-Old Bond is a weapon meant to contend at those mid-range levels, it'll help you net some of those rangier kills to upkeep your Rift, synergizing wonderfully here with Sanguine. Now for my Arc Warlocks. Guys, Zala 2.0, aka Centrifuge, is so nasty, but you have other options. Trinity Ghoul, Thunderlord. And I know Thunderlord got a nerf this season, at least in regards to like pairing it with Divinity and doing damage against bosses, but it's still a good option. And then you have things like Legend of Acris, which takes us to arguably the best application of Sanguine, similar to that of like Solar Warlocks, is hot swapping with kinetic surges. Guys, you can do something like Anarchy with Sanguine. Hot swap to a kinetic weapon, unload with that kinetic, and then swap back. This is so good that we're actually going to be doing damage testing here in the next few days, testing Sanguine and all these hot swap options. And I know some of you remember rocking double slugs with Anarchy. Well, fellas, with Sanguine, it is back. Now, for my Stasis Warlocks, you can use a number of different weapons, with one of the bigger standouts being Agar Scepter for general play. Now, for DPS, Cold Comfort, which is the Stasis rocket from Ghost of the Deep, is arguably one of, if not the best, DPS weapon in the game currently. I am still trying to get the god roll here. With perks like Envious Assassin combined with its origin traits, Restoration Ritual, where it states that reviving allies or defeating combatants with finishers will ready an emergency reload for the next time this weapon runs out of ammo. Guys, you can shoot up to 4 rockets consecutively, with Envious giving you up to 3 rockets in the mag, with Restoration Ritual giving you a 4th shot. Combine this with Bait and Switch on Cold Comfort, alongside some kinetic surges and say Witherhoard. Fellas, the damage! We're talking ridiculously powerful DPS. Now for my Strand users, there are a few weapons that could serve you well here. The most obvious pairing for us is Quicksilver Storm. We've done multiple reviews on this, as well as even deep dives. It is a powerhouse primary weapon and can put in great work with Sanguine, opening up your boot mods to any surges that might benefit your heavy of choice, or any mods that might benefit your overall Strand build. The main takeaway here, guys, is the versatility that Sanguine offers to your loadout and the pure damage that it's stacking on. With that being said, PvE isn't the only place that Sanguine can pop off. It's very strong in PvP too, guys, when combined with certain weapon archetypes and an empowering rift. Now, a lot of the weapon frames that previously benefited from slight damage buffs still benefit here, such as Adaptive Frame Pulses. When combined with an empowering rift and Sanguine, Adaptive Pulses start hitting for 38 damage per crit, not only allowing for a 2 burst, but also making it a very forgiving 2 burst at that. All 180 round per minute hand cannons also benefit strongly from Sanguine, as when combined with an empowering rift, they hit for 73 damage per head. This allows for easy 3 taps against all resilience levels. Even some weapons that have had their potential with damage buffs nerfed in the past can benefit from Sanguine, with the first one being Luminarch. Luminarch, when combined with an empowering rift and Sanguine, can now one-shot any guardian who is 9 resilience or less. As long as you got the perfect draw to proc that poison damage, you can get the one shot with Sanguine and Luminarch. This is very strong. Granted, we know Bungie's going to be addressing Luminarch after this season, but for the time being, guys, yes, you can run around PvP and one shot with this bow and exotic combination. Now with Sanguine, you can even return to the Beyond Light 120 hand cannon meta. As standing in an empowering rift with Sanguine Alchemy, as well as a 120, your damage will be 97 per crit, giving you the 2 tap against Guardians 6 resilience or less. Now keep in mind though, it's not all about the fast TTKs. I love having a time to kill that can cook, but the fact that it adds on so much more forgiveness for pretty much every single weapon makes this a great option for PvP. Now the weapon that I actually want to try with Sanguine is actually Cold Heart. Now I bring up Cold Heart because we actually did a live review of it, and people don't understand that target lock originally existed on Cold Heart, at least by design. Cold Heart though inside of PvP is actually a phenomenal weapon. Alongside Sanguine's damage boost though, from an empowering rift, tacked on with say Arc Souls on an Arc subclass, you can imagine Cold Heart could shred very quickly. Keep in mind though, the main thing with Sanguine is that it does make you stationary, so that's its balance. But there is a playstyle here, guys, that I know my laning Warlocks can capitalize on. Overall, guys, Sanguine's new buffs have finally made it a genuine contender for Warlocks after so many years. It offers a surprising level of versatility that can benefit you in both general play play and in DPS situations. And it can open up your build to a lot more options that wouldn't be available without it. Fellas, if you enjoy these deep dives and breakdowns on these different exotics, a like on this video is very much appreciated. Big shout out to the team for all the research done on this one. Lots went into this as we really wanted to just narrow down where Sanguine actually sat after the most recent buff, and it's quite nasty. Well, fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
Slap that like button like your mama told you right.